pushy broad from the Bronx, New York. Follow her voice, a straight dog is nice. She's a pushy broad from the Bronx, oh yeah. Don't be surprised if you wanna listen twice. Make decisions, find the right choice. Know yourself better, find your own voice. It's okay if you need help today, cause everybody needs a little push. From the pushy broad from the Bronx, New York.
Welcome, Transformation Talk Network listeners. My name is Ellen Stewart, and I am the pushy broad from the Bronx. Welcome to my show, Recovery Recharged, where I get to have you listen to advice and support from experts in addiction, also good mental health. So this morning, we're going to talk about something that affects women mostly in their 40s and over, but affects women of all ages. And this is a show for not only women to listen to, but men as well. I've entitled this show Midlife and Merlot. If you're at a stage in your life where you are going out for the afternoon, or maybe you're dropping your kids off from school, you're having lunch with colleagues, and you're sitting there, and maybe you're ordering a drink or two, and this is how you spend every day, are there addiction crises in women that are 40 and over? I was very interested in this because I see this in my own clients. So I have decided to bring on an expert that works with women that are 40 and over to see if there is a correlation between what's happening in our lifetimes in midlife and the possibility of addiction or substance use disorder, somewhere around the perimenopause and menopause states. So my expert this morning is a wonderful woman from Montreal called Debbie Harbec. And Debbie is a certified life coach. She coaches women over 40. She teaches them how to transform their perimenopause and menopausal experiences so that they can get healthier, reduce their symptoms, get stronger, eat with enjoyment, calm their minds, and most of all, have a good night's sleep, which is what we can all use. She's had 20 years experience in the health and wellness industry. She has her own podcast. We're going to have her introduce to us this whole situation of midlife and Merlot. The Pushy Broad from the Bronx welcomes Debbie Harbec. Good morning. How are you, Debbie?
Good morning, Ellen. I'm great, and I'm really excited to be here today.
So tell me something from the beginning. I know that you have a great niche and it's wonderful. Why did you choose to become a coach for women in midlife?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It's kind of been an evolution over time. So it all started back in 2000. My mom passed away from colon cancer. So she and herself was in midlife at 57. And it just changed my trajectory. I was actually an aerospace engineer, so in a very, very different industry for sure. And I just turned a corner and I decided to do things that I was more passionate about. So I went into personal training, got some certifications as a yoga teacher, nutrition, and then I got into the life coaching, which is really the bulk of what I do now, and helping women at the same time, at the same age as my mother was, and I'm 51 as well, so I'm heading into that category. So yeah, it all came together like that.
Well, first of all, you were an aerospace engineer, and that is enough to qualify you to be on my show in September, Women Who Push for More, because I want to definitely hear about that career. But let's back it up. And first of all, our condolences for the loss of your mother at such a young age. But I understand why you picked up the torch and you really wanted to find out what was going on. Yeah. So part of your work is perimenopause and menopause. Could you define that for us? Because sometimes we're not sure.
Yeah, I have to say I wasn't sure either. So I really had no idea until I was in perimenopause. Merimenopause would be a good word. Perimenopause.
Yes, don't you wish we could call it merimenopause?
Yes.
So hysterical. That's great. You have to coin that term. Remember that, okay? I'm
Yes,
sorry.
thank
Continue.
you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, perimenopause. So I didn't even know perimenopause was a word, but about 6 years ago, I had an expanding waistline. I wasn't doing anything differently, but I just noticed my body changing. So I did a little looking into it and discovered I was in perimenopause. So perimenopause is the 5 to 10 years on average, the time before you get to menopause. And menopause is really just a gate. It's just a time when you've gone 12 months without a period. So perimenopause is all the time before that 12-month period happens. And then you're in menopause or actually post-menopause. So menopause is really only a moment in time, technically.
Yeah. Some women would disagree with you there. Me in particular, if we're thinking that menopause is a moment in time. But what's really interesting to me was that, of course, perimenopause, standing for premenopause, is a 5 to 10 year situation. For me personally, it was one of the most tumultuous times in my life, emotionally and hormonally. I remember throwing plates, actually throwing dishes across the room at my husband, who ran out of the house in fear of his life because my emotions were absolutely all over the place. And for me, perimenopause lasted 7 years. So tell me, what kind of symptoms, in addition to throwing dishes, should we be looking for in ourselves during this time?
Yeah, great question. And yeah, some people I'm sure do throw dishes. I wouldn't blame them. It is not an easy time to go through. So some of the things that you've probably heard of before, I just mentioned one actually, an increase in belly fat, which is really what tipped me off. But a lot of women experience hot flashes. That's probably the most popular symptom you've heard of, hot flashes or night sweats. So you wake up with wet sheets. Joint pain, migraines, anxiety increases, incontinence, constipation, brain fog, memory lapses. There are literally about 36 different symptoms of perimenopause. This is going through perimenopause and then past the menopause gate. Usually these symptoms will continue maybe into that as well.
What some people should understand is that during the perimenopausal state, you don't necessarily start with erratic menstruations. You actually can have normal periods throughout that entire time, even though your hormones are raging, correct?
Correct. Yeah, you can go for a few years with just a normal period, but you could have all these other things happening. And that's what makes you wonder, what is happening with me? Because I don't feel like myself. And yeah, you will get an irregular period at some point. So they can get longer, they can get shorter, they can be a mix of everything. But generally, you start with something else that tips you off that something is happening to my body. Yeah.
So the clients that you see that are in the perimenopausal state, and usually on average, this has to be early 40s, right? Maybe early 40s, sometimes late 30s, but most of the time early 40s, 42, 43, 44. If they're later in life, maybe 45, 46, going on until their beginning of 50s or late 40s into menopause. Do you find that these women have emotional upheaval as well?
Oh, for sure. For
Like
sure.
what?
There's a lot of emotions going on. Like anxiety is a huge one. So anything that maybe you thought was a little bit stressful before this time of life, all of a sudden becomes a lot more stressful. It all of a sudden feels like you've got more happening. Anything you were overwhelmed with before just seems like more of a mountain. It can. And that is because of the hormonal change. So right now, if you are in perimenopause or into menopause, your cortisol levels are more prominent than they were before you went through this time because you don't have those female hormones to keep the stress hormone in check as much. So it really does cause a lot of upheaval in terms of anxiety, in terms of emotions just running wild. It could be all kinds of negative emotions, like you mentioned, anger, which I assume you were feeling when you were throwing plates.
You think?
Yeah, maybe. So yeah, there's a lot of extreme emotions. We could cry for no reason. I mean, there's a lot of things happening, but it's mostly that our hormones are changing. And those two hormones, the female hormones, they don't act in isolation. They affect all the hormones in our body. So we are just changing in general. Our whole body's adapting.
So do you find that because of this state, especially as we're struggling with all of this, even in the menopausal state, do you find that some of the women that you see actually turn to mood altering substances to alter their disposition and get back to what they consider to be more level?
Yes. Yeah, I think we're seeing more of that. I mean, there's a lot of studies actually going on about it right now because one of the reasons, yes, I think is because we're trying to feel more normal. We're trying to relax. Alcohol does relax us. So, some women will relax with alcohol. Some women will relax with food. But of course, it's short-lived. It's just a temporary fix, right? So yes, they will try to avoid either negative emotions or just to feel better, they will turn to alcohol. And that is just a growing concern because we are between 45 and 60, the fastest growing demographic when it comes to alcohol consumption. And females in particular, not males, females. So it's pretty concerning. And yes, we have more on our plate than ever before as women. We have more responsibility than ever in history. We've got jobs, we've got kids, we've got parents, we've got a lot of people counting on us. And we are hard on ourselves on top of it. So there's just a lot going on. And then there's social media memes that are just normalizing drinking wine as a way of escaping from your life or dealing with children or it just makes it seem like, oh, this is just normal. I get together with my girlfriends, have some wine, and I'll feel better.
I want everybody out there to understand that it's very possible that through your entire life, up until perimenopause or menopause, you may have not thought of using alcohol as a way of leveling off or a way of coping with hormonal stressors. It does not mean that you will be okay in managing that. We understand that some light drinking or some normal drinking is okay, but for a woman normally, more than 6 or 7 drinks per week in a 7-day period constitutes an abuse or even addiction problem. So, like Debbie said, it's very important for us to understand that the fastest growing groups of alcoholics and addicts in the world happens to be women between the ages of 45 and 60. And we cannot help draw some correlation between that and the hormone situation that women are going through between perimenopause and menopause. So, what do we do? How do you help your clients in this regard?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, it always has to start with awareness. So I do, and that's kind of the paradox here is a lot of women are turning to wine, especially wine. I say wine, but it could be any alcohol, but especially wine, to calm themselves, but yet they don't want to be doing that. They don't want to be having to depend on alcohol to feel better. So first of all, it's just the awareness that they're doing it, that they're having wine because they want to feel better, that they're avoiding feeling bad, any negative emotions, stress, overwhelm, anger, whatever. And they're using wine to do that. First is that awareness. Then also the awareness of what it can do to your body. So, just the things that can happen. And in perimenopause and menopause, it's even more of an issue because, yes, it can lead to heart disease and breast cancer and all these things we need to be aware of, right? So it's starting with the awareness, and then it's just learning to sit with negative emotion, learning that negative emotion is human. 50% of the time we feel negatively. So we need to be able to sit with that, to accept it. Yeah, I'm feeling angry. I can sit with it, but it will pass. Emotion doesn't stick with us forever. It's very random. It just comes in and then it goes out and then it returns. And so we have to realize this is just a passing thing. It's not going to kill you. We can sit through an emotion, let it go. And then it's to come up with other ideas of what else could I be doing to feel better? if you just simply want to replace the drinks you're having, or if you want to go out and do an activity, if you want to call a friend, find a strategy that works for you, and find a reason why this is so important to you to fix as well.
It's also very important for us to know that the research in perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopausal situation is constantly evolving. And because of that, doctors have wonderful suggestions for minimizing the range of emotions, for being able to maybe eliminate the night sweats or the hot flashes that I used to get every 6 minutes. And there are also wonderful herbal remedies that you can ask your doctor about so that you're not going through emotional extremes. Because you and I both know that if I'm in the throes of throwing plates, there is nobody that's going to tell me to calm down, right? So we have to understand that our emotions in the extreme can now be helped in new ways every single day. Wouldn't you say that was the case?
Absolutely. We can always do something with it. And I mean, yes, you can go see your doctor. And I do think that's an important piece of this that we could talk about too, is to go find somebody who understands menopause. Not all doctors do. So it's important to find a specialist that does, that knows what you might be going through. There is hormone therapy. There's been a lot of controversy about hormone therapy for women for years because of old studies that were done, but the safety of hormone therapy has gotten a lot better in terms of we know more about it. So it can help with that as well, possibly not for everyone, but for some. So yeah, we can start by doing that. And then there are a lot of things we can do about our lifestyle so that we feel better in general. If we get out and move more, we will feel more positive. We will feel better. If we're eating the right foods, they will help us feel better. If we're sleeping enough, sleep is huge. If we are not sleeping enough, we will feel more negatively. So that is a really big one. So we have these different areas of life that we can control. And that's what I help my clients do, is look at their lifestyle and the things they can control. What can they do? In conjunction with working with your medical practitioner, if you have one.
So if clients want to work with you, and I know you're in Montreal, but you see clients and you do virtual appointments as well. I know that. So you're available nationally and internationally. How do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, they can get in touch with me easily through my website, debbieharbeckcoaching.com. I also have a podcast, as you mentioned, the Midlife Momentum podcast, which has a lot of good free information about perimenopause, menopause, all the changes you might be experiencing. So please tune into that podcast. It can help. And yeah, I'm out in the socials as well at Debbie Harbec on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn as well.
That's Debbie, Harbec, coaching.com. Her podcast is the Midlife Momentum podcast on Apple, Spotify, and Google as well. So when a client comes to you and needs help, what do they usually say? What are the popular questions you get?
A lot of times it's to feel better in their bodies. So women in general, this is what I generally see as women at this time of life, they are so busy that they are not taking care of themselves and they don't see themselves as a priority. But when they start having this change in hormones, they start thinking, I need to take care of myself. There's something wrong. So they come to me and they say, I don't feel good in my body. I've gained weight. A lot of them, it's weight gain. So they're like, I've gained weight. I don't feel good. I'm achy. So they're like, I need to start taking care of myself. And now my kids are getting a little older, so they don't need me as much. So I think this is time for me. Plus, they usually have a little bit more money to spend on themselves. We're at that time of life where we can maybe afford to spend more time, more money on ourselves. So this is the time when they usually come to me.
It's wonderful that the universe allows us that time for like you said, women, unfortunately, neglect themselves because as the caregivers of their family, for the most part, or at least the role that they have assumed, they decide that everybody else comes before them. But then as the kids get older or they get older, their bodies tell them, no, now you have to devote the time to yourself. It's almost
Yeah.
a spiritual awakening, right? It's an epiphany for women. I understand that as well. I didn't get the fat situation, fortunately for me, but I got the anger in spades and the night sweats and the flashes, the hot flashes. I used to have to sit with fans all around me at work. It was just a horrendous thing. So I am so grateful that women are talking about this openly and that there are coaches out there that address this specific situation. So I want you to see somebody like Debbie Harbec in Montreal by going to her website and by also listening to her podcast, the Midlife Momentum podcast, wherever you find podcasts. So what advice do you have for women who are entering into this stage? And give us some concrete suggestions about the habits they should be incorporating right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I think even before you get to perimenopause, ideally, you're starting to change the way you're starting to look at the way you live life. And the first thing would be, are you sleeping well? Just check your sleep habits. Are you getting to bed at a good time, waking up at a good time, giving yourself between that 7 and 9 hour window of sleep? So key. Also looking at, are you moving enough? Are you getting the required, they say 150 minutes a week of activity in intermediate intense activity? So a good brisk walk at least 5 times a week for 30 minutes would be great. But doing things like that will definitely help. And eating, making sure you're more conscious about the food that you're eating. Hopefully you're preparing your own food most of the time. That would be ideal. And or having some sort of home cooked meal most of the time. But just being more aware of that. And then stress. Stress is probably the biggest thing. We don't even realize we're stressed a lot of the time. We have chronic stress behind the scenes because there's so much going on in our lives that if we were to turn it all off, there'd still be this hum of stress going through our bodies. And I call that chronic stress. It's just there all the time. So it's to realize what's happening to you, that there is this chronic stress, and how do we bring it down? How can we manage stress with doing things that are quiet, meditation or yoga or knitting or reading books or things that make you feel calmer. So these are really important things you can start doing now, even before you get there. Or if you're in the middle of it, it's all good too. Even if you're in postmenopause, these things, it's not too late to start doing any of this.
It's also very important. And I know that you have always asked your clients about their substance use, right?
Yeah, I do ask them about, alcohol, and alcohol does come up for many of them as something they do want to reduce because it does contribute to hot flashes. Like hot flashes are really affected by alcohol, or sleep is affected by alcohol, or belly fat is affected by alcohol. So these are all exacerbated by the use of alcohol. So yeah, it's something that comes up often.
So that seems to be a big thing, especially when they go out to socialize. Just like you said, their kids are older. They have more time during the day. They're not staying home taking infants out, but they are shuffling their children to various activities, after school activities, dance lessons, soccer lessons, karate lessons, all kinds of different things that require us to be clean and sober.
Yeah.
And also understanding that addiction can hit you at any time. I don't care if you've never had a drink in your life, but if you are drinking more than 7 drinks a week, this is a problem. And if you are doing that, especially to mask symptoms of perimenopause or menopause or postmenopausal situations, women that are bored because they're older and they have nothing to do, and all of those situations arise, we need you to know that this is a serious problem and you need someone like Debbie to help you out. So, Debbie, tell us again how we can find you.
Yeah, you can find me on my website, DebbieHarbecCoaching.com. You can find me at my podcast, the Midlife Momentum Podcast, and also on the socials on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn, Debbie Harbec or Debbie Harbec Coaching. You'll find me there.
That's wonderful. And of course, Debbie's podcast, which is really wonderful for people in this situation, the Midlife Momentum podcast, also good for partners or spouses of people going through this to listen, to see what to look for, and to understand what a woman is going through during these phases of life. Debbie, leave us in 30 seconds with a message to these women. What do you want us to know today?
I just want women to be aware, become more aware and honest with themselves about if you are drinking or over drinking, even if you don't consider yourself an alcoholic, do you want to reduce it? Chances are you do. So just define the state you want to be in and that you do want to let it go, and then get some help. Get somebody who can help you. Yes, you can reach out to a coach. You can work with a therapist. You can, if you need exercise and you think that's going to help, go see a trainer or go see a dietitian, but find somebody else who can be in your corner and help you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Debbie. This is Ellen, the Pushy Broad from the Bronx. We'll see you next time.
This is Ellen Stewart, the Pushy Broad from the Bronx, saying thanks for listening, and remember, everybody needs a little push.
From the Pushy Broad from the Bronx, New York.